Hi everyone, it's Phil here from Ashland Leather. I'm really excited to show you a preview of some private stock items that we're going to be putting up on our website, ashlandleather.com, on the private stock page this Friday, May 5th. And everything will be going live at 12 p.m. noon Central Time. Let's start off first looking at some really incredible pieces that our very talented and skilled team have come up with in our little shop here in Chicago. This first one is our Johnny the Fox style. This is our traditional bifold wallet. This is the green shell cordovan with an embossing of this little bit of gator scale texture. We also have a hand stitch on this one and a contrasting yellow thread, which turned out great. We also have a complementing long wallet that we'll look at in a moment. On this Johnny the Fox, however, we have a hand-stained green edge. And on the interior of this Johnny the Fox, we've combined some more green gator shell cordovan with some yellow horsehide latigo on the top. So really interesting green and yellow combination. And now let's look at that long wallet here. This one is extra special. Everybody that has seen this wallet in person, all of our team is really struck by just how beautiful both of these two pieces are. So green shell cordovan again. This time we have it in a Western texture. So it's a little bit different than the gator texture. This happens to be my favorite texture that Horween embosses onto their leather. We also have that same yellow hand stitching and same green hand-stained edge. On the inside of this one, we have the larger section here with a snap closure, and this is a magnetic snap closure. And the bottom yellow leather underneath here, as well as on the card holders, that is the yellow horsehide latigo. Up next is another Johnny the Fox. This one is in a marbled blue shell cordovan, and marbled blue shell cordovan has a range of color from a little bit of a darker greenish blue to sometimes it's a little bit more of an aqua blue, and it fades down to a little bit more of an orangey tan and all of the colors in between. To me, sometimes the marbled blue kind of looks like marbled green and marbled black shell, but there are a little bit more of those blue tones to it. This one also has a contrasting teal stitching along the outside that hints at the teal horsehide latigo on the interior. And speaking of horsehide, we've got some really special horsehide herbies here. Check this out. We've made a few of these, the stone horsehide latigo. And the horsehides are naturally more thin. So the fat herbie here made in the stone horsehide latigo is much thinner than most of our fat herbies. So a little bit of an ironic name there. We also have that same stone horsehide latigo on the interior. Up next is one of my favorite leathers. This is another latigo piece. This time it's on the steer hide, so it's a little bit thicker, and I'll try to compare the difference in thickness to show you what the horsehides are. And the horsehide is about 0.4 millimeters thinner per piece. A couple years ago, I picked up a few bundles of natural latigo from Horween, and I thought people would really appreciate the light color. I thought people were trying to go for more of like a vegetable tanned leather color, just that very natural look, and that's why we made the natural latigo wallets. I've brought it back here for a small batch of fat herbies again in that natural latigo. This develops a very, very nice patina. It tends to get a little bit brighter in luster, and then the color changes very, very slowly. The luster development that accumulates on the natural latigo is really, really striking. It becomes very, very glassy and smooth. And in addition, I have some very, very special fat herbies. This one is in black shell cordovan. Incredible piece of black shell here. It's almost like an epic texture black shell cordovan. Depending on what angle you look at it, you might see some of these little bits of texture come out. The leather is very, very smooth, but it's almost like there's like these little ripples of texture that are sort of underneath. It's kind of hard to explain, but when you see it in person, you might be able to see what I'm talking about. The other thing you might be able to see very easily is the bold, chunky thread of the hand stitching along the outside of this, and it's in an orange color for the hand stitching. On the interior, we have two gold foil stamps, the Ashland on the right, the Horween shell cordovan on the left, and then we were able to cut a very nice Horween shell cordovan ink stamp into the center. Now check this guy out, another total stunner, psychedelic shell cordovan this time, and the psychedelic shell cordovan is sitting on top of some emerald green shell cordovan for that middle piece. I'm going to spin this around because the psychedelic shell is very dynamic depending on what angle you look at it. The tones and colors tend to be a little bit more and less vibrant, which is very, very interesting. You might notice it's very light at this angle, but as I spin it, it becomes a little bit dark at other angles. This one is also hand stitched with a pea green color stitching. And on the inside, we have some marbled shell cordovan, and this is marbled blue shell cordovan. We have two hidden card slots on this guy. The last thing to mention is the edges on this. Really cool violet hand stained edge that plays off the psychedelic color on the outside. And here's another fat herbie in shell cordovan, another a little bit more of a funky shell look. This is a finish that Horween does. It's called inverted shell, which means that they finish it upside down. So we get all these random dye marks and splatter on the shell side of the leather. Really cool range of color in this as well. So I'll give it a little spin just to show you how the color changes depending on what angle you look at it. Really, really interesting look the inverted blue shells. This one has a blue hand stained edge, and on the inside, more inverted blue shell cordovan with gold foil stamps. This one is also hand stitched, so a lot of people have been coming to us looking for that really bold, chunky thread look. That's what the hand stitching will do for you. Up next is another Fat Herbie that is also hand stitched with some really, really cool epic dye splatter. This is reverse color 8 shell cordovan, and that is on top of color number 8 shell cordovan, the classic color here. These are the same leathers, but this is flipped backwards. On the interior, we have more epic splatter, and I really like how this one turned out. Really intense splatter on this Fat Herbie, and then 2 gold foil stamps on the inside. Here's another reverse shell cordovan piece with epic splatter. This one's a little bit lighter in color, and that should be very, very obvious. We have the Horween ink stamp on the exterior right with some splatter on the left. All of the edges of this wallet are hand stained to match the color number 8 shell cordovan. And on the inside of this Fat Herbie, this is also reverse color 8, same 2 leathers, but you can really see just how much dye has accumulated on this reverse piece. They're all very, very random, although the ones that are extra full of color like this tend to be a little bit more rare. One Fat Herbie that's been sitting on the table this whole time, another private stock piece here. This is the rare whiskey shell cordovan. It's very similar to natural shell cordovan, but it is a little bit more golden and a little bit more yellow when you compare it side by side with natural. A lot of people are looking for this rare color of shell. It's a fan favorite. Here's another hand stitch piece. This time it's on a Frank the Enforcer, and I love this piece. I love the way that the tumbled shells look, and this is tumbled verdigris shell cordovan. Check out these little bits of ripples. And this texture is achieved by the tannery by tumbling the leather in steam heated wooden drums, and it just sort of beats up the leather and it puckers in a very interesting way on the shell cordovan. And the stitching on this one is also that hand stitching with a bold, chunky look. The color of that cream color stitch goes very nicely with the lighter tones in the tumbled verdigris, so you get a really nice range of color from that sort of pale green verdigris color to a little bit more of like a tan shade. Let's look at the back of this guy. We have more tumbled verdigris shell cordovan. We call this wallet our 5-slot Frank the Enforcer. It's a normal Frank on the front with 2 card holders there, and then 1 larger slot in the center. And then we've added an additional card slot on the back to give us 5 card slots total. And before we get to some more wallets, we have something we don't do very often, is a private stock belt. I know a lot of people have picked up the natural shell cordovan private stock belt that we just released a week ago. Thank you guys so much for supporting us on that. And this belt here is not shell cordovan. However, it is a piece of leather that is tanned alongside the cordovan. This is what is known as the horse butt strip. Now, this horse butt strip has been finished exactly the same way as the color number 8 shell cordovan. If you look at the back, you can see the natural veg color of the strip here. But the tannery has decided to play around and try to experiment with finishing the strips just like they do with the shells. So they apply a little bit of color, they add a little bit of Venetian shoe cream, and then they glaze it smooth on something called a glazing jack, and it gives it a really bright, shiny luster. What I love about the horse butt strips are all these natural striations in the leather. Really interesting texture in addition to that color. So when you add the color 8 stain over this sort of tiger stripe texture, you get this really interesting layered effect. So we have 2 belts in these color number 8 horse butt strips. These will only be able to be made into size 38. You'll also notice they have not been cut to length. So we're going to ask you to provide your size once this has been ordered. But again, we can only go up to size 38. Up next is another marbled shell cordovan piece. This is marbled blue shell cordovan again. This time it is on our small zip wallet. I was noticing earlier that the depth of color in this piece is really, really special. I love how like almost neon it looks at certain angles. You'll also see that this has a teal color stitching on the outside that is hinting at the teal horsehide latigo on the inside of this small zip. Up next is a tall Tony the Ant. You can see this really beautiful piece of black shell cordovan on the outside that extends all the way to the top. So it's a little bit different than our normal Tony the Ant that has a thumb notch on the bill slot on the outside. This one has natural waxed and burnished edges with epic dye splatter on the interior. Now here's our normal Tony the Ant with the thumb notch that I was mentioning. This Tony is made in marbled cigar shell cordovan, and on the interior of this Tony the Ant we have reverse shell cordovan with a bunch of ink stamps. And here's one of my favorite versions of shell cordovan. This is raw shell cordovan in the denim color. We call it raw denim shell cordovan. Does not have that bright mirror-like shine that normal shell cordovan has. We have a hand-stained blue edge on this guy and then a reverse blue interior. Here's another funky shell to look at. This is what he'd been calling the skip finish. And there's a few different versions of skip finish at this point. but I don't know how to call him other than skip finish. He's been experimenting with different looks, and I'm not sure how he achieves these looks, but I think he's using different applicators with different stains to get these little bits of like splattered look. And the skip finish shell here is made on our 3-shot card case. We have 1 card slot in the front, 1 larger slot in the center, and then 1 card slot on the back. And we have a few Capone money clips that will be going up. We don't do many natural Chrome Excel wallets these days. We also have a few different versions in color number 8 shell cordovan. This one is really special. We have the contrasting cream color stitching along the outside, and on the inside of this one, we have more color 8 shell cordovan with a black spring bar money clip. And you might notice these 2 hot stamps that sort of make it reversible. So it could be upside down or right side up, depending on what way you look at it. I have a couple more Capones. This one's in my favorite shell cordovan color on the top card holders. This is amaretto shell cordovan on top of color number 8 shell cordovan. Again, we have a cream color stitching, and on the interior of this one, we have more amaretto shell cordovan. Now for this Capone and a few other items, we've been experimenting with double stitching. So this was stitched once and then stitch again. This was inspired because all of the spines on all the Capones are actually stitched twice because we want to reinforce those to be extra strong. So it gives it a little bit of a more bold thread look in the same way that the hand stitching does by double stitching this. So this one is made in intense blue shell cordovan with gold foil stamps on the inside. Up next is our traveler passport holder in black shell cordovan. This one is all blacked out. We have black shell cordovan, black hand stained edges, black stitching. And we also have a extra hidden card slot. This one is unstitched on the top to give you extra access. And I have about a dozen other items that will be going up, including this amaretto shell cordovan. Tony the Ant, we've got a Fat Herbie with reverse garnet on garnet, tons of other stuff. And there will be a bunch of vertical card slot Bugs Moran as well. This one here in the tumbled, I think this is tumbled marbled color 8. There's so many cool things that will be going up this Friday on the website. If you have any questions about any of these items, definitely let me know. We're going to end it on this guy. This is a funky piece of color number 8 shell cordovan that's kind of hard to show in photos and videos. There's like little spots. I think this might have been a darker section of the skip finish. You might see some of the spots right here. So we're just going to call it Funky Color 8 because it doesn't really look like the other skip finishes. Thanks for checking out the private stock preview video today. Again, everything will be available on the website May 5th at 12 p.m. noon Central Time. Hope to see you there. And until next time, take care.